What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population. Because where we are, there's nothing else.
And do you have views about what should be done about that?
Can't you guess?
Well, it could be on a spectrum from mass sterilisation to greater availability of contraception. I don't know what your views are as to what can be done about it.
Well, I think it might be described as voluntary family limitation.
I grew up in the 1960s, watching those TV commercials with those starving kids in Africa who stared vacantly at the camera with sad eyes and distended bellies. And in 6th grade, my Glee Club teacher, Mr. Collins, had us change the words in this song we were singing. 3 billion people in the world to 4 billion people in the world. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the population was so big. And I was even more shocked because no one else in the class seemed at all disturbed by this fact. And a couple days later, I told my friend Susie Hollander that because there seemed to be too many people in the world for it to handle, that I wasn't going to have any kids. And she looked at me and she replied that she was going to have 3. This is unsustainable.
I am not a bigot. Mother Earth is dying because I exist. I trust these philanthropist eugenicists who just want what's best for me. I am an empowered and free global citizen.
A war over resources? Or will it stop growing because people choose to have smaller families? And by smaller families, I mean one-child families. And this is where people start getting nervous talking about overpopulation and population issues because they're scared that I'm going to take away their rights to have children. But I don't want to take people's rights away. I want to give people rights.
Hi, we're Natasha and Luca, that vegan couple from YouTube and other social media.
The time has come to make animal rights history.
Join us in London on October 7 for the Animal Rebellion.
It's a 2-week disruption, but you can come for any time you're able to.
Taking direct action for animals to disrupt business as usual and demand serious change from governments is what the animal victims and the planet desperately need.
Hey everyone, we're in Lisbon, Portugal. We are disrupting in a supermarket, or a shopping centre I should say, with lots of restaurants around us. We have about 23 activists with us tonight and we're playing the screams of animals.
If we all sterilize ourselves and give the animals human rights, we can all have equal animal rights together and eat plant-based fortified kibble to stop the #climate crisis and achieve #climate justice with the good grown-ups at the big banks, governments, and global corporations.
Is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade up in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. So of course,
that's an interesting thing you just said.
Our Earth is warming up and our oceans are rising. Extreme weather is wrecking millions of lives.
From California to the Amazon, our forests are burning. We are in a climate emergency.
We cannot let this happen on our watch. Up to 1 million species are becoming extinct because of mankind's actions, and time is running out.
History shows us that when enough people rise up and demand change, those in power have no choice but to act.
Millions of people around the world are taking to the streets on a climate strike, demanding our leaders listen to the science and act.
We must take back power. That means voting for leaders who care about the future of our planet. Join in supporting environmental movements like Greenpeace or Fridays for Future, a global youth movement inspired by Greta Thunberg.
And doing what we can to live in a greener lifestyle, like cutting out meat and dairy in your diet and reducing plastic use.
I mean, the population's going to have to stop growing at some point, so why not stop now? Instead of wishing that some invention or technology will save us that doesn't even exist yet, and we're not even sure works. So for everyone to have quality of life, the number of humans on Earth needs to go down. And I believe that it needs to go down to 2 billion people, which sounds radical because there are 7 billion people on the planet today, but it's actually the world population of just 80 years ago. So let's change our idea of what the ideal family looks like. And let's not be afraid to talk about overpopulation, because it is not about taking rights away from people. It is about giving opportunities to women, children, and future generations. And lastly, let's be part of the solution.
The Red Brigade symbolizes the blood that connects all of us. It's the blood that connects humans, species, all of us to the earth. So for me, the Red Brigade is a vessel to hold the emotions of grief and loss and rage and joy and love and peace. And it's those emotions that connect all of us. And we work, or we try to work as one, which symbolizes that we are all connected. We act as one. We move as one.
We are all one. Everything is relative and morality is subjective, so we must act together to save the planet. You are highly evolved gods who evolved by random chance through evolution that created something out of nothing in a meaningless cold material universe that evolved life out of nothing by transforming cosmic ponscum into monkeys who must save the planet by getting rid of themselves and creating a totalitarian technocratic global monoculture society. We must eat nutrient-fortified kibble in our smart cities and pay for our cockroach milk and VR porn with carbon credits so the IMF, World Bank and Fortune 100 can save the planet from the evil CO2 we exhale, and poor little Billie Eilish can have her future back. I am not deceived. Pop culture is healthy and is not programming me to self-destruct. I will save the world by eating sustainable vegan kibble and demanding the government give me the same rights as animals. I am not being dehumanized. I am empowered. Veganism and vasectomies should be mandatory. Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, and I trust the people on the TV screen. Peace, Reflections.
Yep. There you go. Let's make sure. We've got the audio, we've got video, we've got Father Deacon Dr. Ananais here, the Norwegian News on YouTube. If you guys don't already know, go over and subscribe to him. He is a depopulation advocate. And, no,
an expert.
He's an expert of the science that is settled, and that's all you need to know. So everything that he says, he has doctor before his name, so clearly anything he says must be absolute truth, right?
And bubbling liquids in Ermar flasks. Bunsen burners in here.
Yep.
No, you can't see that because you have to be credentialed. You have to have a secret pass.
When you reach the highest level of scientism, you get a black lab coat.
Yeah.
No, but Father Deacon Dr. Ananais, he's a deacon in the Holy Apostolic Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church. He's also you're a professor, aren't you?
Yes.
You are a
yes,
professor. What do you teach? Gender studies?
I teach people how to think.
So gender studies. No.
Have you heard the joke? Is there a doctor around? And I'm a doctor. Quick, this man's having a heart attack. And the person says, well, I'm a doctor of gender studies. Quick, she's gonna die. And then the professor responds back, she?
Excuse me? Did you just, that's, yeah.
She.
Excuse me? It's they, them. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a philosophy professor.
I teach, this last semester I taught ethics, political philosophy, and socio and political philosophy. And I also taught introduction to philosophy. I've taught logic, business ethics, all kinds of different courses.
Nice. So
those are my most recent, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the essay. I'm not sure if you published it yet. It seems like you've been working on an essay that we've been discussing maybe over a month or so at least. that kind of ties in some of the ideas that we've been discussing here of scientism, right? Science as this new faux replacement religion. Scientism as kind of the religion of modernity, and the myth of progress. So that's what we titled the stream today: Scientism and the myth of progress, and that's what we're talking about. I mean, it's something that is kind of all pervasive these days, isn't it?
Yeah. So hopefully there are some scholars that have presented, some of our best Orthodox scholars too, that presented this at a recent conference, want to publish it. I don't know exactly where they're publishing it, but it should be published. And then also kind of reworking some of the same ideas to talk about kind of current events regarding the coup science from an Orthodox point of view. And that's going to be published in a book that's coming out at the end of August, or that's submitted the end of August. That's right. Submissions need to be in at the end of August, and then at the end of the year, I think it's coming out. The big publisher, hopefully.
Yeah. So New York Times bestseller, going to be published around the same time as Dr. Anthony Fauci, who you're not even. I don't think you're even allowed to say his name in a negative light on YouTube. So I better just shut up. Just say the words Dr. Anthony Fauci on YouTube, and
they'll be knocking at your door.
Yeah, you're gonna have a knock on your door really soon. But yeah, I mean it's scientism, right? Like, I mean, how do we? What's the difference between scientism and science? I mean, it seems very few people understand.
By the way, I'm obviously qualified to have books on it.
He's got books. He's got a DR in front of his name. He's got.
By the way, this is a good one. This is on the philosophy of science. And again, just because somebody can throw in the word science doesn't actually mean that it's science. A lot of this is what's called the demarcation problem. What constitutes a pseudoscience versus science? Another good one, Michael Polanyi, Science, Faith. I've got like coffee spilt all over. I had my science machine spilt coffee all over my book.
You gotta get one of the experts in to take a look at that.
Yeah,
make sure it runs right, like and up to the scientific specs.
And one of the things I want you guys to think about too, and Polanyi speaks about this, is what came up in the last century with issues, for example, with the Soviets. Particularly, he goes into like the Soviets, a communist science that took on a very kind of different, everything was interpreted through kind of a Marxist lens and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting phase because there's some things that actually tie into, the preview image that we've got right now. It's actually, let me see if it's still there. Yeah, it's we got Jeff Goldblum here holding a totally real Tyrannosaurus Rex, one of the one of the birth creatures of science, and of course the eschatology, the science eschatology right behind and above him, the Space Brothers, of course, the highly advanced and evolved beings who through the science that is settled, but theirs is settled more in the future, of course. The Space Brothers, those play into the kind of Soviet science as well, right? That, like, have you studied the cosmist movement, cosmism? No, the Soviets, they had this myth of basically cosmism, which is this kind of, it really does tie in a lot with the modern UFO myth. In fact, Ben Goertzel, who's developing AI and who works for Hanson Robotics and developed the Sophia the Robot AI doll thing that was given human rights and citizenship in Saudi Arabia, which is, it's just not just a joke. This is a huge deal. Right. I mean, they're literally, they're kind of, they believe that they're creating life, or they say they believe that they're creating life through this AI stuff. But his book is called The Cosmist Manifesto, and he harkens back to the cosmist movement, which actually began before the Soviet Revolution, but then was an influential force in the mythology of progress, space travel, saviors from space, our salvation being in the empty space between the stars and the cosmos. So the cosmist movement was kind of like the UFO movement that we see now, mirrored, but in the early 20th century in Soviet Russia and pre-Soviet, pre-Bolshevik Russia.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a thing that people always like to think that science just exists in this kind of neutral, uncontaminated state. That it's just this, science deriving from the Latin scientia means knowledge. The Greek is episteme. And that, well, if you just say the name, and it'll make it knowledge. So it's important. Why do we bring up the example that you brought up, the Soviets, Nazi Germany, is because that, and this is something that I argue, that science doesn't exist uncontaminated in this kind of perfected vacuum outside of the influences of the socio-political structures and history and ideologies in which they're embedded in. So let's look at those and see how that actually corrupts knowledge. Would be the nobody ever seems to kind of move past that, the word, like, well, science, it obviously must be
true.
And a lot of the political philosophers of the 19th century and the positivists like Comte and Saint-Simon, they purposely use these kinds of words, like, for example, social sciences, to give it legitimacy. That, and I always joke with everybody, like, yeah, you could pretty much legitimize anything by putting the word science on there. And we'll talk a little bit how that ties into scientism, because it's a move of the devotee of scientism and the technocrats to, regardless of its science, to always make sure you use that name under the banner of science.
Right. Yeah.
Make knowledge impossible, but call it knowledge and science.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they've essentially weaponized kind of like liberation theology type stuff under the name of social science, right? And when you look at the Rockefeller Foundation, we did a deep dive. We did a 2-episode. Each one was like 3 hours. Deep dive on the history of the Rockefeller Foundation, their influence in forming the modern scientific worldview, so-called scientific worldview, which is actually kind of anything but scientific. When you look at the scientific method, it's more of a politicized anthropology and a weaponized anthropology. And if you read the book Caltech, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Rise of the New Biology by Lily E. Kay, who was an MIT, I think she was a professor at MIT, but it's a fantastic book, and it's about the transition from the transition to modern scientism through the lens of the molecular biology program that was sponsored through Rockefeller Foundation funds, also influenced by the Carnegie Endowment as well. But yeah, she shows this connection to the social sciences, and how the social sciences were always an idealistic control mechanism for the elite, who saw it as a way to restructure and reformat reality through behaviorism and the control of the organism and the behavior modification on a mass scale, in order to bring about this like utopian eschatology, in order to bring about a final end state of a global perfect state where everyone's happy and healthy, which is we're still being used. We're still being kind of duped with this stuff now.
Yep. And I found a lot of that in, I was teaching out of this book, Dante Gemino's From Machiavelli to Marx. And the same thing, it's everything that you were just talking about there, that one of the things that you're going to notice is, and this is where I tie it into modern form of Gnosticism, is a destruction of the old world, which means a rejection of God, the church, and tradition, and then a recreation of that in your own image through a will to power. And all of them have this theme in common, and they're all utopian. They're all trying to emphasize the eschaton. They want salvation on their own terms. They create salvation. And notice this is the Gnostic commonality between ancient Gnostics and what Eric Vogelin would call modern Gnostics, is that the problems with God in the world, who created it. And so get rid of that, create a dream world of your own. And where does salvation lie? Salvation lies within oneself. So in what one creates, you had already brought whatever, even if that's the myth of aliens is salvation, whether it's the messianic nationalists of, for example, he goes in here like Fish and Mazzini's messianic nationalism, whether it's Marxist utopianism, whether it's the scientism and positivism of Comte and Saint-Simon, some of the other 19th century radical political thought, for example, some crazy stuff from Proudhon and Fourier. That's some of the stuff they come up.
Well, the French Revolution is like when you see what actually the fruits of this type of right, like when you look at the fruits of this type of thinking, this utopian thinking, and I want you to maybe explain in a minute the idea of the immanentization of the eschaton, and like I think a lot of people maybe don't know what eschaton means or immanentization, and let's flesh it out. But when you look at the fruits of this, these movements, these utopian movements, where it's like we're going to perfect humanity. Man, Nietzsche said, "Man is weak. We need to overhaul man and create the Übermensch." What does it result in? It's always the fruits of it are always genocide. The fruits of it are always like we're going to kill off the weak, depopulate 50% of the population, which was an ideal that was pushed during the French Revolution as well, and it always just ends up in mass murder and genocides. For some reason, it's almost as if we're not meant to do this. It's almost as if it's like maybe perhaps an inversion of the truth. So yeah, can you flesh that out? What is the eschaton? What is eschatology? And then immanentization of the eschaton. What do we mean by that?
So the end of time, like the completion, perfection, paradise, right, where God recapitulates everything. Like everything is, in one sense, made right. After the final judgment. And now, what atheistic, political man, Gnostic man wants to do is, I don't want that. I don't want a savior named Jesus Christ who's going to save me and I need to be healed and repent. I will destroy that God in my Promethean hatred of the gods. I'll destroy that and make myself God.
So it's like rather than the grace of God, it's like the will to power.
It's a will to power. It's a Nietzschean will to power that results from the Nietzschean deicide. But notice they always take these religious elements, but they want what Christianity offers, just reconceived and done on their terms. So this is why it's modern Gnosticism. Man will save himself. Man will do that. We will eliminate all poverty, right? Because I mean, what do you think about like in paradise, right? No more weeping or suffering. I mean, if you make it in, right? If you respond to the program, right? And God's grace.
Death is abolished, right? I mean, a state of eternal life.
Right? So what does the atheistic, Gnostic, technocratic, modern political man want? I'll do that. No, thank you, God. I'll do it on my own.
Right.
I don't need you to. And so what are they doing? Well, AI ties into this too. And here's another kind of theme of Gnosticism. Matter's bad. Like we'll transcend it, right?
Yeah.
We'll create, immortality.
We'll separate consciousness from matter and live forever in this yet to even be discovered space where our consciousness can exist without matter. It's like the AI myth, right? Like the Elon Musk, that's what he's selling.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question too, because there is one thing that modern science and health has provided is longevity of life.
I was going to say gender transition surgeries. Okay, yeah, so cool.
I didn't know you could say that.
We're on YouTube, but you could talk about. I mean, we think it's great that people can have gender reassignment surgeries at 3 years old because a kid. I mean, my 3-year-old wants to be a cockroach or anything, a shovel. We think it's great. A tractor. My son wants to be a tractor.
But I won't say something because I was just going to say something, but I'll probably get banned if you. There's probably one issue I can't get into.
Well, anyways, we're on YouTube right now, guys. If you're on YouTube, we're going to be going over second half of this. We'll be able to go without self-filtering and no censorship over on Rockfin, which we're actually simulcasting on Rockfin right now. Second half of this is going to be on Rockfin. Big shout out to the Rockfin crew over there. We got a few tips over there. We'll read those tips in a minute. 0 tips from the YouTube crowd as usual. No support from the YouTube crowd. Bunch of stingy bigots on YouTube, but Rockfin is throwing down. Rockfin loves it. YouTube don't care. So thank you guys on Rockfin. If you guys do want to support on YouTube, there's a link in the description for the Streamlabs, and the top tipper will win a free trip to Mars with mandatory installation of Neuralink by.
I thought you were gonna say Montana. I was like,
no, actual Mars. You will go to actual Mars, but you got to get the Neuralink first. We're the top supporter and tipper on either Rockfin or YouTube. So I had to throw that one out there. And second half, we'll tell you when we're cutting it off because we're going to get into one of the most obvious manifestations of this cult of scientism now, and this cult that's been going viral, we'll say, for the last year, going mega viral. The modern cult.
Well played.
We'll be taking the mask off of the cult that's gone viral this last year.
Well, think about this. So, with all our advancements in health and modern technology, we can prolong the years. And ultimately, isn't that exactly what they want to do away with? Let's just do away with all disease and death. Let's live forever, or attempt to. We always have to ask the question, why? Now we can answer that within an orthodox paradigm. Why do we seek immortality? Why do we see disease and death as not something actually natural?
Right, because from the Orthodox perspective, death is not something that God created. Man was created for incorruptibility, which would explain man's obsessive seeking of that state of incorruption, but through the wrong means because of the fall, right? I mean, that's something that, of course, there is no fall in scientism. There's just linear progress.
By the way, I recommend science soda. How do I know so much about science? Because I drink big gulps of it every.
And the suds, the sciencey suds that it gives you. Oh man, I could taste it. I could it through the.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, that's simply just the inherent properties of matter there for you, right there.
The science is settled. Science soda. It's for everyone, for the children, for they, them, he, her, all of them.
Oh yeah. So. What is their purpose of trying to eliminate poverty, trying to prolong life? For what? What? I mean, it's just people pretend these things are just a good thing. But again, I think we should precept them in their worldviews that, well, why, according to your worldview, is that a good thing?
Why is death bad in the scientific worldview? Because death is just a part of life from that perspective, right? Without death, you can't have life from the scientific worldview. I mean, if you're going for this naturalistic assumption, death, if other people's death is good for you because then you can take their stuff. You can create a larger harem if you genocide the males that are competing for your will to power, and you're going to be the top monkey. So why is it bad that death exists? As long as you don't die, I guess, from the scientific worldview and the will to power worldview, death is, I guess, fine. Who cares?
And what Vogelin argues, and then I kind of take this more into kind of presuppositional apologetics, but you can find it in Vogelin, is that so what is knowledge? How can you have knowledge? You can only have knowledge if there is an intelligible world to actually know, number one. And there can only be an intelligible world that can be known if there's a necessary preconditions for that knowledge, i.e., that there is actually something that transcends, that's a transcendent ground of that order in being, which we know is God. So that really is understood. How is science possible, and when are you doing science? When in a Christian paradigm. As soon as you commit the kind of Nietzschean deicides, as soon as you start to destroy the paradigm, right, which is what the Gnostic does, and rejects that, it can no longer actually be grounded as science. Now, that's not to say, I know we had some debates on this too, that atheists and other people outside of an orthodox worldview can't actually know things. Can't actually, for example, let's say we use this example today. You got an atheist and he's doing math and he gets the right conclusion. So he has a true belief and he uses the right means to actually get there. So he has kind of a reliable method in which he's justified. I would say as an Orthodox Christian that, yeah, of course he knows, but there's a big difference. Can in his worldview, can in somebody's philosophical or socio-political worldview or other religious view give a coherent account for how knowledge is actually possible? So do you guys see the difference? One is somebody can have knowledge. The other one is, well, how do we actually give a coherent explanation of how that's actually possible? So that's one of the problems that, well, once you divorce yourself from the paradigm that would give a coherent account of the grounding and possibility for knowledge, which is, I'm really kind of translating Vogelin's words into kind of like a more presuppositional apologetic. The articulation and grounding of science no longer becomes possible. Now, it doesn't mean that one can never do like actual good science, but it means that you can't ground it. And furthermore, you've actually opened up kind of a Pandora's box for corruption and the lack of kind of transparency and analysis that leads to scientism. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I just wanted to set the kind of grounds of, well, how do we get in that place? For example, think about this. And I think that Americans today are, a lot of the normies out there are really naive about the state of the political, ideological, social ideas and affairs that are going on right now. That like, well, we would never be deceived or lied to, or
not by experts.
By experts, right? Well, use this as a litmus test. So good science too, it should actually, you want to falsify it, right? So just like in philosophy too, let's say in epistemology, like Descartes comes up with an evil demon thought experiment, not because he really thinks that that's the case, but he wants to create a situation in which he can analyze, okay, even the worst case scenario, what could I actually know? Now, I'm not saying Descartes ultimately was successful. I have critiques of his epistemology and his thought experiments and stuff like that. But in principle, there's nothing wrong. We do this in ethics too. you can conceive of the worst case scenario such that you can use that as kind of a litmus test and pass things through, so you can actually get a principle and be like, okay, well, I think I'm pretty then justified in holding this as being true. We'll use this as a litmus test, as a thought experiment. You're in this time under Stalin, the Soviet, or you're in Hitler's Germany or something like that. How would you, as either an ordinary citizen or somebody actually doing science itself, actually know if it's being corrupted by the ideology? Once you figure that out, then apply that same standard to what's going on. Well, then I should be able to use that same, how do I know, right? And that's ultimately what I keep trying to get people to dig into and kind of introspect, that how do I know I'm not actually being deceived? What are the conditions that would justify me in actually assenting to, like, yeah, this would be good science. I don't think this is good science. Nobody kind of takes that critical mode. That's a sign itself that we've moved out of science and into kind of a religious fundamentalist dogmatic, which we would call scientism, right? And I'll give some other kind of maybe necessary conditions for scientism. Anyways, questions about that so far?
Yeah. Let me come over here. We've got a couple questions that were maybe some statements at least. If you guys got any questions or comments that you guys want us to read, if you're watching on YouTube, the best way to do that is through the Streamlabs. Of course, the top tipper gets to go to Mars for free and get your consciousness uploaded into the cloud and forever live in Google is an avatar. So the link is in the description there for the Streamlabs. Let me see. I got a Streamlabs here. Thank you. We got one Streamlabs from YouTube. Austin Horton, the one person on YouTube that doesn't take this show for granted. Austin likes it. He gives $5 donation, says, good stuff and I love your work. Maybe one day your bigot wife will accept your transition. Christina, she accepts it now. I mean, she accepts it. I just, through repetition, they say repetition is the greatest form of mind control. She now believes that she's a lesbian. We got a couple tips over here. ELC, what's up, ELC? ELC tips $5 says, on the prolongation of life, even that may be going away. Currently reading Deep Nutrition by Dr. Catherine Shanahan, and she posits that current 40-year-olds will live less long than their parents because they tend to have joint and heart problems because their parents didn't at their age. She says it will be even worse for millennials due to all our chronic conditions at young ages. It's already been projected that the millennials will live less. They have less longevity than previous generations. Our generations are becoming more and more sick. They're becoming more and more diseased. The Weston Price.
Well, obviously, the problem is the physical body. That's why you got to get rid of that and upload yourself into the cloud, right?
Your body is just a cage. You have to escape the cage of your body.
What do they call them? Sleeves in the AI.
Oh, I haven't. That's what they say. They say sleeves.
No, so they've got this these projects that they actually talk about that once you're uploaded into one of these, that's all actually I am. Like, if you ever want to know what I am, I'm just that. That's all I am.
Zip drive.
Okay, I'm on my body. Obviously, in my mind, what's my mind? Well, my mind's simply just a series of kind of rules and functions that once I learn that and upload that to there, that's really Father Deacon right there.
Right. They do want to tell you that these avatars are like your whole, if we just map your responses to stimulus and create a model of you in a virtual world, that's basically you, is what they're trying to tell you.
Because a recording of me and me are the same thing, right?
It's insane.
Then what you can do is you can just, when this old body gets worn down, you can just get another sleeve and then just plug in and activate, right? See how that?
Yeah.
See how that works? Right? Or I guess we could go here. Come here. I'm trying to use you for example. Come here. We could go trans species.
Exactly.
We could just plug that in, and now Father Deacon Ananais is a
That's
cat.
actually not a cat. That's actually Father Deacon. Father Deacon Ananais is actually in there. He's in the cat.
Yeah. So those are just my avatars, and see how awesome science is.
The wonders of modern technology. It's just with it. Technology will. This is what you get sold on. It's going to give you everything. Technology is going to propel you into the eschaton. It's going to get you past the barriers of physical existence and into an infinite cosmos where anything is possible, right? So it's all just, a lot of it just plays on like your vain imaginations at a certain level too, of like you can have an avatar and be super hot. You'll be hotter in your avatar than you ever would in real life. You'll be smarter. You'll be better. It's going to make you everything else. It's your digital appendage of your scientism devices is going to become, this great extension of yourself that's going to ultimately turn you into a god. Right, which is, of course, the promise that the serpent gave in the garden. You're going to be as gods. You're going to live forever. But yeah, like ELC, thank you ELC for that tip, man, on Rockfin. And I definitely agree. We're not going to live longer. We're already seeing. I mean, it was unheard of in my parents' generation to have people in their early 20s dying of cancer. Right? Like by the time I was in my mid-20s, I already knew several people who were my age who had brain tumors, who had cancers, and it's getting worse every single year. It's horrible. And who knows what's going to happen now that everybody's being cured with the wonders of modern science in a coerced fashion globally now in response to this this recent invisible enemy. So yeah, thank you very much. Michael Abbott, this is a good one. He says, he tipped $5, says, is it possible that metaphysical materialism rules the world, and when it collapses, it erases history to retry it all over? I mean, that's isn't that the Gnostic worldview?
The
material, that's nihilism, right? The eternal recurrence. Yeah. That's the Nietzschean hellscape that he eventually died, perhaps still believing in a
destroyed and then recreated every.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because Bertrand Russell actually says has like some thought experiment where what if there really isn't kind of any identity over time, being a materialist, that you're just recreated and destroyed every millisecond. Whatever created means in his world.
Right. He doesn't believe in creation, and you're like a self-assembling. I actually have Bertrand Russell right here. Here's a great quote from his book, The Scientific Outlook. You'll appreciate this. This is from his chapter called Scientific Metaphysics. He says, it is, I suppose, natural that every man should fill the vacuum left by the disappearance of belief in physical laws as best he may, and that he should use for this purpose any odds and ends of unfounded belief which had previously no room to expand. So he even said there are no real physical laws because there is no real truth, right? But then later he says in the same chapter, not that he admits that scientism and the scientific outlook has metaphysical presuppositions that can't be reconciled in the worldview. And then he says, not that I would undervalue science as a metaphysic, but the value of science as metaphysic belongs in another sphere. It belongs with religion and art and love, with the pursuit of the beatific vision, with the Promethean madness that leads the greatest men to strive to become gods. Perhaps the only ultimate value of human life is found in this Promethean madness, but it is a value that is religious, not political, or even moral. So then he goes on to say, until quite recently, men of science have felt themselves the high priests of a noble cult, namely the cult of truth. Not truth as the religious sects understand it, i.e. as the battleground of a collection of dogmatists, of course, but truth as a quest, a vision faintly appearing and again vanishing, a hoped-for sun to meet the Heraclitean fire in the soul which he denies exists. There's so much gobbledygook there that just really is contradicted.
This is so much funny. Have you seen this in the chapter Artificially Created Societies?
Is this in the Scientific Outlook?
Yeah, so
the technique in society. chapter?
Right after Technique and Society.
Technique and Society, and then it goes on to Scientific.
So he's going to
government.
outline a whole thing about like how science
is,
is going to create this kind of utopia. Whether men will be happy in this paradise, I do not know. Perhaps biochemistry will show us how to make any man happy, provided he has the necessary of life. Perhaps dangerous sports will be organized for those whose boredom would otherwise turn into...
Sound familiar?
Perhaps sports will take on the cruelty which have been banished from politics. Perhaps football will be replaced with play battles in the air, which death will be the penalty. Right? It goes on. It gets so ridiculous. And then it goes into... There will, of course, be a universal language. And he just lists it right here, which will either be Esperanto or
Esperanto is the true language of science.
Or Pidgin English. Because
they'll just make everyone retarded so they can't speak English.
Oh, this one's good. Let's see. Since outlook and emotional background will be considered unsettling, serious students of history will be able to obtain a permit from the government to study such works as Hamlet and Othello. The general public will be forbidden access to them on the ground that they glorify private murder, whatever.
Which of course is not. Which of course he can't really condemn in his worldview, and admits that he doesn't believe that morality is real, but we should condemn certain things because they're morally wrong.
Then pirates and red Indians or books about them are outlawed too. Of course, I mean, science obviously would tell us that. But then I think I'm trying to remember the part where, where he talks about overpopulation and euthanasia. Like, euthanasia, I know it's got a bad name, but a bad rep, and people will be kind of turned off to that, but with certain social conditioning, we can get around that. It's just like straight up, right out of.
Right, but again, the death cult. It's like we have to exalt death. It ends up becoming this like worship of destruction.
Malthusian death cult, dude.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, right? I mean, it's the exaltation of destruction. It's nihilism, right? I guess that's the end result of nihilism is the attempted destruction of belief in God, and they end up exalting and worshiping anything else in the place of God, including themselves. Whatever lusts and passions get unleashed, and that becomes the new God. The will to power.
And you're going to see these themes. I know that you talked about it, and Jay, you've talked about this too. This kind of Darwinianism and the Malthusianism kind of combined to that we need the death to evolve. So they're going to be a death cult. They're going to promote this. Jonas Salk's Survival of the Wisest, right?
Yeah.
But this is, and then I'm also thinking about this too, Arthur Kessler's The Ghost in the Machine, mutating into the future. Doesn't that sound really fun?
That sounds great. I want to be.
That's a really.
Which X-Men would you be if you mutated?
Yeah,
into
exactly.
The future?
Oh, sorry, you weren't one of the ones that made it. You were, not one of the fittest,
the elect.
So yeah, you don't get to notice. Yeah, that you've got these religious themes, right? And there is a kind of religiosity to scientism itself. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-science. I'm trying to actually do good science and establish an environment in which it's not easy for science to be corrupted. The use of propaganda. That it's not corrupted into pseudoscience, into scientism. So that's really what I'm trying to do.
There's a difference between science, the scientific method, an exploration, an exploration of physical phenomenon using exploration of hypotheses and proving hypotheses right or wrong through experimentation. There's validity to it. But it's when the people who are telling you follow the science don't want you to actually understand what the scientific method is. They want you to worship
Yeah.
it. They want you to believe that science is going to give you little cute dinosaur babies, and that Jeff Goldblum is going to, Jeff Goldblum is this great ethical philosopher of science because of chaos mathematics, and that the UFO space brothers are gonna come and reveal to you who's your daddy. Your cosmic space brothers are your daddy. This is what you're being sold. It's not real actual science. You're being sold on a worldview.
Yeah, and that's a cult-like tactic too. So one of the themes of like a cult, right? There's a mythology, right? There's a story that's told, but told in such a way that it decreases critical thinking, right? I mean, how many cults have you found that are actually teaching their cult members logic? Right, and critical thinking.
No, right.
Like, you never.
No,
so it's the same thing too, and this ties into what I argue, and what Eric Voegelin argues in Science, Politics, and Gnosticism, that makes this a modern form of Gnosticism is the concealment of the kind of the crime that it's actually committed, right? So you don't want people to actually see that what you're doing is not actually science. So you need to conceal that. And he goes through the different political philosophers, like going through Machiavelli and Marx, to show that, this is what Marxism does. This is what Hegel does, what National Socialism does. That society and that paradigm, which really is a dream world, a mythology that's created, right? That severs and removes God as the intelligible ground of that being, right? And creates a speculative dream world, right?
Right. With its own creation myth, its own mythology, its own eschatology.
So you're going to have all these similar elements and stuff like that, but built within that story, and as I always say, the operating system, is a concealment. This is why Voegelin calls it, if you're purposely trying to hide something, this is what actually is deceptive about, and he calls it the intellectual swindle. He says, Voegelin states, Marx's prohibition of questions has to be characterized as an attempt to protect the intellectual swindle, right? So what am I really doing? I'm tricking you. Right? I'm deceiving you, whether you think it's science or paradise or whatever that I'm providing. I'm tricking you because it's not actually that, right? But I can't let you find that out, right? So what do? I create a system and narrative that makes such questioning impossible. And he says, for the adept, from the standpoint of the adept Marx, the swindle was the truth that he had created through the speculation, the prohibition of questions, was designed to defend the truth of the system against the unreason of men. And later he goes on, and make sure you always use the term science or knowledge in the cover-up of the swindle that you just did on the good folk out there. So that's kind of a hallmark of science. So notice what's going on with everything that you pointed out. You can't inquire into this stuff. Is this actually science? Is evolution, this Darwinian evolution, this combined with this Malthusian idea, is that a myth, or you can't ask that?
Yeah, you have to presuppose it, right? And when you actually start to explore if this is scientifically valid, a lot of these bedrocks of modern scientism and these, the creation myth of scientism just falls apart. The self-assembling cosmic goo that's just pond scum that eventually evolved into a rat, and you share a common ancestor with rocks and bananas and shrews, and therefore you have to save evolution from itself by killing yourself because there's too many of you, because you exhale bad CO2, which evolution accidentally made, and it's like there's this. It ends up in this insane, self-refuting Gnostic weirdness, which is I got this clip pulled up from Jurassic Park. Remember the scene where, the great philosopher of science is Jeff Goldblum.
So notice he's going to take the place of the traditional wise one, the philosopher.
He's the ethical guy. I mean, he's the only one who's doing ethics.
This is very kind of postmodern to this kind of idea that you find within scientism itself, that all other disciplines, and I'm going to talk about that. Part of what scientism is the absolutization of this particular kind of empirical mode of knowing as the only mode of knowing. And so, as Del Noce describes, itself becomes totalitarian because it cannot allow for other modes of knowing, philosophy, ethics. So what you're going to find with Tyson, what's his name? Neil
deGrasse Tyson.
Give me some of the other, Lawrence Krauss, all these people. Well, philosophy is dumb and needs to be eliminated. Why? Because, the scientist has taken the place of. I think
Dawkins says the same thing. Dawkins claims.
All the new atheists say the same thing. I think you're actually going to see that manifest in that scene. No longer is the ethicist needed, the philosopher, the priest, I guess maybe even psychologist.
Well, what's so funny about this character too is he's like he's a chaos mathematics guy, and his whole thing is basically nihilism, but it's like a nihilism towards the physical, but then he somehow makes these ethical arguments throughout the whole film, and he's like the most nihilistic in many ways, but his his Gnostic chaos mathematics where you can't really predict any true outcome, this leads him to this ethical ground.
Well,
it
so
doesn't make sense.
It's stupid and paradoxical. You'll also see here too that if everything's chaos, there is no intelligible order, there's nothing to know. So you're making a science of mathematics about nothing. What do you specialize in? I specialize in the science of knowing, not knowing.
Yeah. Well, in this scene, he specializes in the arts of using science to seduce the hot blonde chick.
Oh, that's great. It ties perfectly into, this is the Marxian swindle that Vogelin's talking about, right? Mm-hmm. It's not really about knowledge, right? It's about what? Persuading, right? So the whole thing's just a bullcrap theory, right? It doesn't make any sense. Flower it up enough, right, where you look smarter than the other person and conceal what you're actually doing, that he's a pickup artist.
Yeah, that's what he does here.
Get in bed with her, right?
Exactly.
It's a perfect commentary of what's actually all these kind of stupid systems are. Yeah,
this is what it's like. Great. Spielberg is such a weird dude, but actually this movie, I think it's the source material is better though. Did you ever read Crichton's book, the book Jurassic Park? It's something like 600 pages or something. It's a novel, and it's actually better than the film in a lot of ways. It goes in better critique on all these characters get fleshed out more. Here, I'll play this. Oops. Of course, he's on his science computer, right? Omniscient science computer.
Now, eventually, you do plan to have dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour, right? Hello? Hello? Yes?
I really hate that man. See, the Tyrannosaur doesn't obey any set patterns or park schedules, the essence of chaos.
Still not clear on chaos.
It simply deals with predictability in complex systems. The shorthand is the butterfly effect. A butterfly can flap its wings and be clean. In Central Park, you get rain and stay sunshine.
See, he's already won because he's just used a bunch of fancy terms and confused her, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she's just like, oh, you're so smart.
Oh, so smart.
Can you unbutton another button on your shirt, please?
Yeah,
I want to see more chest hair. Like, do you need some some more hair gel for your chest hair?
We're going to conduct an experiment. It should be still. The cards are bouncing up and down, but that's okay. It's just an example. Now, put your hand flat like a hieroglyphic. Right? Now, let's say a drop of water falls in your hand. Which way is the drop going to roll off? Which finger, or over the thumb, or the other side?
Thumb.
Okay. Okay, now freeze your hand, freeze your hand. Don't move. I'm going to do the same thing, start with the same place again. Which way are you going to roll off?
Let's say back. Same way.
Same way. Wow.
Whoa.
Because tiny.
Whoa, science.
The orientation of the hairs on your hands.
Yeah, look at this.
The amount of blood distending your vessels, imperfections.
Starts touching her up.
And never repeat.
See how science works?
Affect the outcome. That's fun.
Unpredictability.
Unpredictability.
Look at this. See? I'm right again. Nobody could have predicted that Dr. Grant would suddenly jump out of a moving vehicle.
Oh, posit. That's another good one too. The scientism, pseudoscience, the non-falsifiability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So notice what he does right there. Well, you can't disprove his theory because then he's like, well, see?
Exactly.
Random. That just
Everything that happens. Like
everything proves your theory and nothing can disprove it.
Yeah, everything, and if everything that happens that you can't explain is explained by the principle of chaos. So it's like, I mean, it does, and the chaos.
It's a total pseudoscience tactic.
Yeah. But this is mathematics, bro. I mean, this is fully. He's telling this girl, he's like, look, this is the science. This is the.
Yeah, she should have been like.
Look at the hairs on your hand.
You don't want to be anti-math, do you?
Right?
I mean, what if your parents were to find out you were an anti-mather?
An anti-mather? Don't be an anti-mather, right? But it's like, yeah, and of course the whole time it's him working his pickup artist seduction gig. So yeah, that's kind of the end of the scene. At the end of this, I think they get out and they see I think it's like the Triceratops is. The dinosaur is there, and they need to help the dinosaur. And
so good. That illustrated a lot of points that we actually want to make. So you have the religious themes. You create a mythology, but you do it in a Gnostic way that's not actually grounded in the transcendent ground and the ground of the intelligible order. So. You get rid of that, right? That's where you're reading from Bertrand Russell, like Prometheus, the mythology of Prometheus hated the gods.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of an apt phrase to actually in modern man's hatred towards the gods, right? Towards God. And he becomes his own God. I'll do it on my own. But you've got to hide, and it's no longer science, right? Once you do that. So then you've got to hide your crime. You've got to you have to seduce the people, right? Just like Jeff, right? So you've got to use all these words and make it seem like science and math when it's actually not at all. That's the great cover-up, Gnostic cover-up.
And then even give them a system of morality and ethics that's completely contradictory to the basic presuppositions of the worldview, right? That everything is just chaos, you can't predict anything. If everything is just constant flux and chaos and you can never really truly know anything, how can you truly know what is good or bad, right or wrong? You can't. Now, but his character in this film, which I think is perfectly illustrative, even whether it's by accident or not, maybe Crichton was really pondering on these things. Spielberg, Spielberg's not a fool. He's a weirdo. He's not a fool.
He might be a reprobate, but he's not a...
Yeah, he's a degenerate, terrible guy, but he's not a fool. But yeah, there's this scene. Do you remember this scene where he gives him an ethics lecture? Do you want to... Should we play this one next? Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Cool. Let me I got a couple more We got a super chat too. We got a super chat from the Super Chad called "Is Human Milk Vegan?" He donated. He's the top bigot. Look at that, rescuing you reprobate people on YouTube who refuse to support this stream via the Streamlabs. He is rescuing the stream and supporting it. Is Human Milk Vegan? Donated 50 bones, says 50 dinosaur bones, in fact, which we're going to turn that directly into gasoline using science. He says, do you have thoughts on St. Paisios' prophecies? It's probably a better question for Father Deacon Dr. Ananais. I've read some, but it doesn't matter what I think. I'm not clergy, and I'm not a,
we have to be extremely careful about, interpreting those, whether he meant them to be prophecies, what context they were given in. Prophecies really it's not meant to be like palm readings to tell me am I going to win the lottery or something like that. Prophecies really are best understood when the events are happening. But I think we could use it in this sense, be on guard. Use that as, possibly what's the word I'm going to use? Possible clues of stuff that could happen in the future. So that because we're called to be watchful and wakeful. Right. And I think we can use that as that. I don't necessarily the prophecies in the sense that you normally think about them, or if he even intended that. Yeah. But the things that we could use to possibly be aware of things that could come in the future, but they're not infallible truths, or not. I wouldn't necessarily consider them to be prophecies in themselves or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think he ever said. I don't think he ever claimed that they would be either. What the one that strikes me, the one that I remember most strikingly, is the one about the shot and why people would want to avoid a certain situation where everybody in the world was being coerced to take a shot. That does seem kind of prescient. I forgot.
I can't use them just to stay awake. I guess that could happen. That could happen. I could see that. And again, as they're more fulfilled, different things like that, that becomes important too.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, look at this. We woke up the YouTube bigots. We got another one stepping into the fray here. Second place. I'm not sure who. We don't know. We can't say who's going to get. It's just if we do live in a chaos math reality, we could get science juice. No more science juice left.
Oh man, I know. I was just thinking that,
running out. Science
has failed me.
Right? Why didn't science give you a 12-pack of science juice in a can? Strawberry flavored.
Yeah. By the way, it's not juice. I don't drink sugar. It's water.
Science water.
Sparkling water with naturally science flavored strawberries.
Naturally flavored. I like it.
I know.
Natural flavor can include some dubious things.
Well, there's another another kind of
natural.
Use of scientism, pseudoscience, right?
Yeah, we've got naturally precision plutonium fermented strawberry flavored.
And you can they never provide you what natural flavors are. So there's another concealment right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, let's assume the best though, right?
Let's assume the best. And it was brought to us by science,
right.
Distributed by, it says, distributed by
China.
Your ever-loving technocrat, the only true lovers of mankind. Huh, interesting.
Yeah. P.S. Sterilize yourselves.
Go kill yourself.
Right. That's always the message. We love you so much, but there's too many of you, and if we could just create more death amongst you, then we could have this great utopia. It's always backwards like that with these technocrats.
It is not GMO verified though, so that's good.
By who? Dr. Fauci?
Yeah, exactly. Who put that stamp on there? How can I trust this?
Well, if they put a Dr. Fauci face on it.
BPA free, It's got a heart on here. I don't know what that means.
BPA free in an
What's
aluminum
the
can.
U? I think the U is kosher and gluten free. Like any of my water, like where did you get your water? Well, I genetically modified my water using tons of gluten and plastics.
Free BPA. We got WebJ0219 donate $25. Says YouTube bigots. He's calling out the YouTube bigots. He's the number 2 in the YouTube bigot chat over there. Thank you. You guys are ahead of Rockfin now. Now YouTube. I gotta stop ragging on YouTube. You guys have sent more of your science tips, more of your science notes, your Federal Reserve science notes than Rockfin has. So shout out to the YouTube crew. We're back on YouTube. Thank you guys very much. Let's see. I got a couple tips over here. ELC says instead of spreading Esperanto worldwide, they just made English into the new Esperanto. They just destroyed English and just it's interesting. You get another one from ELC. Thanks, ELC. Says part of this convo made me think reading those Dune prequel novels where some of the villains are humans who physically cut their brains out and transplant them into giant robots, then give themselves really cringy and larpy new names from Greco-Roman mythology like Agamemnon, Ajax, Juno, Ajax, Juno, etc. They collectively call themselves the Titans. How interesting! Yeah, you can't get rid of the idea of gods. Scientism makes the Space Brothers or the technocratic elite become the new gods. The whoever's at the front, the spear tip of the evolution are the new gods, and you can't get away from that. They still have their gods in scientism, don't they?
Yeah.
Gregory Lee says, my mom's getting into functional medicine. What do you think of that, and how the more holistic approach will be perhaps hijacked by the ruler class? Hey, I think functional medicine can be a great approach. You're going to want to look at getting different types of certifications, and I think a lot of these functional medicine practitioners are much better informed than standard physicians who. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, a lot of these functional medicine practitioners are not just big pharma middlemen.
Well, wait a minute. Can you actually make that into a scientific statement that can be verified by the FDA?
Oh, sorry.
The Rockefeller-funded.
Yeah, I put quotes around that, and at the end I say quote from Dr. Fauci. There we go. Then it's true. Touche is the only correct answer to that is touche. ELC says natural flavors in food drink is definitely not Orwellian at all. No, sir. Thank you, ELC. Thank you, Tracy Wiegman. Thank you, everybody over there on YouTube for sending the tips. We appreciate that. So let's watch this. We might not even get to we might not even have to talk about the last part. We've already gone almost an hour and a half.
I know, this is great.
Dr. Ananais. Great stream so
far. I'm having great fun with you guys and Tristina.
Thank you.
Do you like Tristina or Tristana?
It just depends. I mean, I can find something to be offended about pretty much at any given moment. So, I mean, just whatever you want. If I want to gain control over you in a psychopathic way, I'll just pretend to be offended no matter what you say.
Nice.
Yeah. It's the true ways of progress and science. So yeah, maybe I'll just take the last part out of it, and we'll keep talking about scientism and the myth of progress, and we'll do another stream. We do another stream.
What was that from? We'll do another stream, like part 2 of this, where we go into like the other stuff. But you all remember what is Leonardo DiCaprio plays the airplane dude?
Gilbert Grape.
No, remember when he played Gilbert Grape? Howard Hughes.
Oh, that was a funny one.
Way of the future. Way of the future. The myth of progress. There, he got it. The Aviator. Howard Hughes had already figured out scientism's cover up of the myth of progress. He was just having a hard time getting it out the way of the future.
Yes.
You should find that clip too. It's hilarious to play after this.
Yeah. Well, I've got this one. I've also got a recent clip that we can talk about this. I do have a clip of Dr. Fauci that's been famously spreading all over the internet today. The high priest of scientism today. I think we could talk in generalities about homeboy Fauci without hopefully getting removed from YouTube. We'll see what happens on that, but I think we can talk about that. We don't have to get too deep into the new viral cult that's gone viral and unmask the cult of the viral cult, if you know what I mean. All right, here, let's watch the next clip from Jurassic Park, where we get to learn about the ethics of scientism. And this kind of reflects, I don't know, this scene does kind of remind me of Bertrand Russell's goofy book, The Scientific Outlook, which is very unscientific in every single page, in every way. So yeah, let's listen to this. First, though, turn off desktop audio. There we go.
First, way in the future.
Let's play this. Oops, it's muted. Excuse me.
After that absolutely spectacular design, spared no expense.
And we can charge anything we want, $2,000 a day, $3,000 a day, and people will pay it. And then there's the merchandise. I can personally...
Donald. This park is not going to cater only for the super rich.
It's not loud enough.
Everyone in the world has the right to enjoy these outfits.
Sure. What, we'll have a coupon day or something.
Yes, money. We'll make so much money from this science. Yes. The lawyer and the philanthropist, right? Well, how funny too that it's Attenborough, right? It's Sir Richard Attenborough, who's the brother of David Attenborough, who's just a staunch and rapacious advocate of depopulation and. We must do this because of the science. The science tells us we must remove most of the humans from planet Earth. You know, this is the brother of him. This guy, he's actually a lord. He was a lord. Now he is a lord no more because he dead. But yeah, this is Sir Richard Attenborough here.
Before nature.
Here it is. Oh, this is the best. He's disturbed. Like Ian Malcolm. He can't have it. He's like, you guys are playing with something you shouldn't be playing with. And the chaos mathematic tells me that this is wrong.
Yeah. See the lack of humility before nature that's being displayed here on stage.
Well, thank you, Dr. Malcolm, but I think things are a little bit different than you and I had feared.
Yeah, I know. They're a lot worse.
Now, wait a second. Now, we haven't even seen the
No, don't let him talk. There's no reason. No, I want to hear a review point. I really do.
Yeah, don't you see the danger, John, inherent in what you're doing here? Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
It's hardly appropriate to start hurling generalizations.
If I may.
Well, there's kind of an assumption right there, too, right? This idea that genetic power, access to the genome gives you ultimate power. And this is something that the Rockefeller Foundation was fascinated with as a means of social control and creating a utopia. So, it's like this godlike power over genetics that he's referring to here.
It's hardly appropriate.
In what you're doing here, genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
It's hardly appropriate to start hurling generalizations.
If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it.
Like chaos math, where there's literally no discipline and you have no idea. There's no starting point, end point.
Oh, math. A name that I just made up like 2 minutes ago.
Chaos mathematics.
To get this lady in the back of the car.
Right. But it's almost like you're irresponsible.
Like you didn't have to do the work that I had to do. Idiot.
They didn't properly seduce the science. They didn't properly look at that. Look at that beautiful open shirt there. His gold chain. It's just beautiful man, that Jeff Goldblum in this movie. Peak Goldblum.
If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
Oh, sick burn. Sick burn. Sick burn. Like you should have stopped and thought if you should be seducing a woman right in front of her paleontologist husband.
Made up mathematics theories. Just because you could doesn't mean you should, Jeff Goldblum.
Come on, Jeff. Mr.
That's
Goldblum.
so funny. I'll tell you the problem.
Jay says chaos.
Let me give you all these moral absolute, immutable absolutes that I learned from ever-changing, chaotic, unintelligible world of flux from my chaos mathematics that I just made up.
This makes me almost want to read, because I read Michael Crichton's book when I was like really young, and it's so much more in depth on all these ideas of like genetic modification, messing with the human genome and all this stuff, and it's like more scientifically kind of literate than the film in many ways.
And by the way, I think Michael Crichton, just to be fair, like I don't think he's pushing, like he's not pro-scientism. I think that
it was more of a critique on scientism.
It's a critique of science, right? Yeah. So he's actually, and I talk about this in my paper too, that there's a fundamental shift between man of antiquity and modern man concerning technology, because the myth's always like, well, they just weren't knowledgeable enough. They just didn't have the knowledge and technical means to. They actually did, but they didn't. Ancient man of antiquity never grew that beyond what was necessary, and what was necessary was always understood with under God, with the religious theological themes, and nature having real, objective essences and stuff like that. However, modern man, if that no longer exists, the question of like, well, should we make this? Should we do it? There is no more ends, right, to consider, right? There is no God or nature. Everything becomes a matter of means. So should we create the bomb? Because, let's do it because we can. Right? So it's this kind of, it's amazing because this myth of progress really is going into nowhere. There is no telos, there is no end anymore. It's simply, as Vogan calls it, the libido dominandi. It's the will to power.
Yeah.
You make it. It's all a question of means right now. I think that Michael Crichton's actually bringing that. He's using Jeff Goofus Goldblum to actually bring that.
Yeah. Well, I think if I remember correctly, the book Jurassic Park also talks about how like they're basically making a reconstruction of what they would have thought these dinosaurs would have looked like, and we don't actually know what these things really were, and we're adding different DNA from amphibians and modern animals in this, and we're actually creating this golem that's really not representative of the true past. So then it calls into question, if I remember correctly, it does call into question the legitimacy of the whole projecting into the past from looking at these bones and stuff, which is again a super important critique, which is like the part of the modern scientism myth. You've got the aliens in the future and you've got the dinosaurs in the past, and this clearly proves that you used to be that you share a common ancestor with a banana. That you
By the way, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of neo-pagans.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They're like
recreating the past.
We really don't actually know what, but let's just take fragments of this different, recreate this. Oh my God, it's a monster. It's a golem. And Absolutely. Now, right, that is neo-paganism for you.
Yeah.
So see how many cool things you can tie it to?
It's funny because I was thinking about that earlier too. That's a really good point. Father Deacon Dr. Ananais, by the way, he's got the Norwegian Noose on YouTube. You want to make sure to follow his channel. Maybe he'd be on Rockfin soon. See what's up. Rockfin's been begging him to come on.
Yeah, they have these guys.
They won't stop bugging him.
Right. Yeah. Right. Me saying we want to talk.
We need to talk. Like let's make a deal. Let's make a deal, bro.
Yep.
It's like, hey, calm down. I've got, you've got Disney Plus.
I'm working on my science machine. Calm down. There, by the way, this is. I hope you guys carry around a science machine too.
What is this? That's amazing. What's in there? Beakers? Bunsen burners?
Well, it's amazing. This actually creates clones of me, so I can scan myself into the science machine here.
Yeah,
see that?
I see it.
I don't know if you guys can see that.
I think that's what you put your butt cheeks on. You're supposed to put butt cheeks on there, and make paper copies in the ether.
See, I even got my chaos mathematic numbers here that you can punch in.
Yeah, you can call the past. You can call up your dinosaur ancestors on that, probably.
So I can send out doppelgangers, clones of myself. I can actually create wormholes. Wait, hold on. There's a special plate. So out here, you can basically, this will actually compress matter and antimatter. That's what these two buttons here.
Yeah,
see that?
I see it.
Matter and antimatter.
Obviously.
And that'll actually create a wormhole.
Yeah.
That comes out like that.
Careful. You don't want to
out.
create a singularity, because if you create a singularity,
then I can actually use the wormhole to travel back in time.
Of course, obviously,
to create new scientific theories and new theories about chaos mathematics. So
absolutely,
that's what I use. I could sell this if I wanted to.
That's amazing.
I think I'm just gonna sit on this investment for.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, that's a great one. That's a great one. Hey, we got a couple.
Because you know what? Like, there's nothing more. What was it? Goldblum said.
Jeff Goldblum.
There's nothing more powerful than my ability to genetically modify myself in wormholes. And,
Nothing.
Just because I can make and sell this doesn't mean I should.
Right.
If we learned anything from, that's it.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum, he's really good at getting himself into wormholes. Let's move on. We got ELC tip $2. It says Richard was the less bad Attenborough brother for sure, not as into Depop as David, and actually directed some decent films. Shadowlands was a solid C.S. Lewis biopic. I haven't seen that one. I've heard of Shadowlands. Thank you though. Yeah, he's definitely seems like the least offensive of the two brothers. Maybe they have more siblings. ELC also tipped $2. Says modern science still can't replicate Greek fire.
Ooh, sweet.
Let's see. There was another one. All right, we had some back here from ELC as well. It says the Pope of Scientism literally said, "By attacking me, you are attacking science." So that was actually he did a little bit of a. That was a spoiler alert. We've got the Pope of Scientism right here, and we're gonna check out another modern example of scientism and progress in action. Oh, here, I'll take this off.
Well, my cat's trying to get my cat, which is myself, because remember I downloaded myself, has to get out. You guys want out? Enough science for you?
Yeah, there's all science
See,
out.
Anti-science cats. Science denying cats. Can you believe it?
Yeah. Don't they know where their food comes from? All right, here we go. So we got, wait 1 more second. Dr. Fauci, give us the truth. All right, here we go. Dr. Fauci, I guess this was yesterday on MSNBC. Oops.
Point. What is your level of concern that we're going to discredit public health officials to the point of, look at Russia. They actually have a good vaccine, and none of their citizens will take it because they don't trust their own government.
Right. It's very dangerous, Chuck, because a lot of what you're seeing as attacks on me, quite frankly, are attacks on science. Because all of the things that I have spoken about consistently from the very beginning.
The attacks
By
on
the way,
science.
let's combine Jeff Goldblum and Dr. Fauci. Is a new character, the pickup artist, right? Who's picking up on, young girls. It says a denial. My pickup is a denial of science.
Like if you don't let me into the wormhole, then maybe you don't like science.
Yeah, that's right.
On science.
Vaccine, and none of their citizens will take it because they don't trust their own government.
Right. It's very dangerous, Chuck, because a lot of what you're seeing as attacks on me, quite frankly, are attacks on science. Because all of the things that I have spoken about consistently from the very beginning have been fundamentally based on science. Sometimes those things we
nailed that one, right? Like debunked. Haters debunked. They hate us because they ain't us. That's they hate the science because they ain't the science, and I'm the science.
By the way, next time I can't even remember the last time I was actually pulled over by an officer of the law, but I'm gonna actually try those lines and be like, the only reason why you pulled me over, officer, pulling over this car is an attack on science.
Yes.
Everything that I've told you, spoken to you, has been scientifically backed up by him. Let's see if I can actually do that to get out of a ticket.
I can't believe he just... Yeah, the science told me to go 100 miles per hour. What are you talking about, officer? This is clearly an attack on science, you citing me for, driving under the influence.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like... Under the influence.
Where do you think we got our beer from? It was from science.
Driving under the influence.
How could you get me arrested for drinking science?
Right? Driving under the influence of science.
Look at Russia. They actually have a good vaccine, and none of their citizens will take it because they don't trust their own government.
They combine Russia, the science. I love it. It's all of it.
It proves my point in some sense that if your quote unquote science is embedded and located in the wrong kind of ideology or socio-political structure, it is corrupted as far as knowing can you trust it. So, I think it's great. And the thing is, think about, we always think that doubting is a bad thing. We even think of St. Thomas, the apostle, is doubting Thomas, so bad. But, and Christ corrects and says, blessed are those, Thomas, that don't. He's talking about those who won't see me and still know and believe in it. But notice that Thomas is doubting and questions, where do they get him? They get him to the risen Christ. And so what is Fauci telling us here? Don't doubt, don't question.
Never doubt. Never
don't
question.
Don't doubt. Don't actually try to figure out if your government's corrupt. Believe it isn't. Be a true American. Yeah. And trust the science.
No, don't be a Russian. You don't want to be a Russian, do you?
You don't want to be a Russian, do you?
I mean, they don't believe in science there. And in fact, they don't trust in their public health officials in Russia either. And they also don't let Jeff Goldblum put drops of water and caress their woman's hand.
Yeah, that woman's hands. That's right.
You don't want to be one of those Russians. They're so insecure. The Russians. They're so insecure.
They don't allow degeneracy to be played on TV, right?
They're so insecure about Jeff Goldblum caressing the women over in Russia.
Good vaccine, and none of their citizens will take it because they don't trust their own government.
Right. It's very dangerous, Chuck, because a lot of what you're seeing as attacks on me, quite frankly, are attacks on science. Because all of the things that I have spoken about consistently from the very beginning have been fundamentally based on science. Sometimes those things were inconvenient truths for people. and there was
You can't handle the science sometimes. You know?
And sometimes I had to change my story about them, but they're fundamentally science.
And if you don't like it, you're just a hater.
Yeah.
Back against me. So if you are trying to, get at me as a public health official and a scientist, you're really attacking not only Dr. Anthony Fauci, you're attacking science. And anybody that looks at what's going...
I like how he third person.
And anybody that even remotely looks scientific. That's not what he's going to say, right?
If you won't let Jeff Goldblum drop drops of water and seduce your woman, you are fundamentally denying the science.
Yeah.
On clearly sees that. You have to be asleep not to see that.
Ooh.
That is what's going on. Science and the truth are being attacked.
Oh! There we go. Dang. Hard. Inconvenient truths there from the priest.
Well, I might as well. Is there a way
Scientism.
somewhere I can turn in my PhD? Like, I might as well just resign at this point. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. What can we do?
What else can I? Yeah. What else can I do? That's funny. What else you got?
Just one more clip. One more Goldblum clip. I don't know, something about Jeff Goldblum that's hilarious. But I haven't seen this movie.
I mean, he just gave like the perfect like totalitarian dictator like speech.
I know, right?
And just like, painted it up with science, like, icing on the top of that cake. That was beautiful.
Oops. Did I even have it?
I was actually inspired. Like, I really want to start actually using those lines.
I didn't realize I didn't have it visual. You guys only heard audio. You guys didn't get to see Fauci's beautiful face while he said that. And there's
and you could actually do that for like job interviews too. Use that.
True. Yeah. Well, I mean, you already have that kind of.
You're obviously attacking science.
No, you're racist, transphobic, right? Homophobic. I mean, now that I'm.
By the way, do you notice all the things that I'm talking about? Where the Vogtman talks about that the modern Gnostic system creates the system so that the questions can't be answered. And it does it, and I explain this in many different ways too. But using this type of language, right?
And it's unquestionable.
To hide what they're actually doing, that it's actually not science.
Well, I have to play this one more time because I can't believe this is real life at this point. This is. I can't believe he actually said this. Not only said this, but got away with it to a certain extent. I mean, MSNBC published this. They clipped this. So there must be a certain amount of people that actually, maybe agree with it or buy into it.
Have been fundamentally based on science. Sometimes it's very dangerous, Chuck, because a lot of what you're seeing as attacks on me, quite frankly, are attacks on science. Because all of the things that I have spoken about consistently from the very beginning have been fundamentally based on science. Sometimes those things were inconvenient truths for people, and there was pushback against me. So if you are trying to, get at me as a public health official and a scientist, you're really attacking not only Dr. Anthony Fauci, you're attacking science. And anybody that looks at what's going on clearly sees that. You have to be asleep not to see that. That is what's going on.
Burn.
Science and the truth are being attacked.
Boom! Like a hammer drops. Gah!
It also talks about too that I think Dante Germino was talking about this. Always. Or was it Dante Germino, or it was, hold on, I have another author for you guys real quick for YouTube that's quite important. One second. It was, you create the false dichotomy, right? That like you're either Yeah, it was actually with the terrorists.
Yeah, either with the Science or with the terrorists.
Yeah, what the heck article?
But that's actually where they're going with this, though, and where they've been going with it. You're either with the Science or with the terrorists. You're putting everyone in danger. I mean, we can't get too much into the
Carlo Lancelletti talks about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think John Gunnell on Technocracy too.
So if you don't agree, you're an enemy of progress, right? You're an enemy of the immanentization of the Eschaton. You're an enemy of the utopia. You're an enemy of the people, the movement. All these words that get they get flowered up and they get all this meaning gets projected on them. That it's ultimately it's religious terminology, right? You're an enemy of the false god of scientism, right? So that's what they're really saying. You're an enemy of truth, right? Which from the Orthodox perspective, truth is God. Truth is not this abstract thing that scientists examine under their
Somebody
microscope.
call MSNBC up and precept that man's word. Be like, truth, quidis veritas, according to your worldview. Like, what is his worldview? Is he an atheist or something?
Fauci's a Jesuit.
He's a Jesuit?
He was Jesuit trained. He says that he accredits the Jesuit schooling and his education to much of his success in his career.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Surprise, right? Surprise. Yeah.
Well, if he's from New York, I wonder if he came from Fordham.
I'm not sure. I think it was. I forgot. There's an article where he says in an interview how he's just so proud of his Jesuit education and all of his Jesuit mentors, and he wouldn't be who he is today, and he wouldn't have been.
Well, I wonder
so
if he could just be doing a hat tip. I actually want to know what he believes. Like,
oh yeah. No, I don't think he's he's not an actual. He's not a Jesuit. Probably not an initiate.
Roman Catholic?
Probably not. I mean, what does that even mean now, too? Like, Joe Biden's a practicing Roman Catholic.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, what does that mean this day?
That's what it word to me.
Here, we got one more clip. We have to go back to. We got to watch that. Yeah, let's watch that sour Anthony Fauci taste off our mouth and get some of that Jeff Goldblum, the golden glow of Jeff
Another
Goldblum.
good one would be Dr. Strangelove too, where he's talking about like.
We'll have to select them for their sexual prowess. And
yeah, he just starts using all like the perfect. It's like the perfect like technocratic like scientism.
He pulls out his little device. It will take approximately 50 years for the. He calculates the how long the fallout will be. Yeah, here you go.
And what's great is it totally takes on the appearance of a cult. What cult? Like, what's the one thing that cult always has? It's always like. The cult member gets all the ladies, right? So it's like, well, naturally, we'll have to have like, 10 ladies to every man.
Yeah, this is an astonishingly good idea.
Yeah.
This is the scene. That's a great film. But we'll finish with Jurassic Park and then we'll go there, right? Because you have the idea of the omnipotent threat of the absolute supreme power of man taking control of the science, right? And you have this through genetic engineering, which is Jurassic Park. You have this through the super weapon, right? Like what the Collins brothers article about the cult of the super weapon, and the H bomb, the atom bomb being the super weapon that could wipe out all of humanity, and it's like this idea of ultimate power through scientific discovery, through Gnostic enlightenment. And through
well, notice about the virus too, like looking like that it's it in fact was created by a lab and is so.
We can't go too deep on that. We can't talk too much on that because we don't need to.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we'll go to. I'll go to Second Strike. It's more purgatory in this Second Strike purgatory. All right, let's listen to Ian Malcolm again. I haven't seen this one.
Should allow our magnificent, glorious dinosaurs.
Magnificent, glorious dinosaurs. The glory of
taken out
science.
by the volcano.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, so the volcano. Should we intervene or let the volcano take out the glorious dinosaurs?
Taken out by the volcano. Silence, please. As deeply sad as that would be, we altered the course of natural history. This is a correction. Are you suggesting?
How come he got so old all of a sudden? He's all like gray and.
It's like 30 years later, isn't it? So, what year is this?
I guess he didn't have a science machine like I do to keep him young.
Well, you can't really tell because chaos math, you don't really know. You have no idea if this is the same Jeff Goldblum.
That's right.
He matters in his own hands. Senator, with all due respect, God's not part of the equation. Is a correction.
Oh, wow.
This is a correction. Are you suggesting the Almighty is taking matters in his own hands? Senator, with all due respect, God's not part of the equation. No. What I mean is that in the last century, we amassed landmark technological power, and we've consistently proven ourselves incapable of handling that power. 80 years ago, who could have predicted nuclear proliferation? But then there it was. And now we've got genetic power. So how long is it going to take for that to spread around the globe? And what's going to be done with it?
Spread around the globe?
The extinction of the dinosaurs.
The extinction of the dinosaurs. Oh, no.
Sure, I know what you're talking about. I'm talking about man-made cataclysmic change.
I'm talking about chaos mathematics.
Change is like death.
He's like, did you just have like a blonde woman I could talk to? Because I could explain this so much better if I was just alone with your wife.
Your wife.
If I could just get in a room with your wife, I could explain this so much better.
Change is like death.
Death.
You don't know what it looks like until you're standing at the gates. Chain.
Death. So yeah, I mean that does segue well into the Strangelove, right? The character of Dr. Strangelove, and this.
God has nothing to do with this. There's no God.
Right. No, it's just man, right? Man's abilities. Man's ability to destroy or to protect the precious, what do you call it? The magnificent, glorious dinosaurs?
Yeah, where are you getting all these like value-laden terms from, right? And there's more like
glory. Weird. Very, very, very strange. John Pro donated $5. Says so many heresies, so little time to repent. Thank you, John Pro. I appreciate that. True, man. True. I mean, that's nothing more to add to that. All right, here we go. Dr. Strangelove scene.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
I would not rule out the chance to preserve a nucleus of human specimens.
Mm-hmm.
It would be quite easy. At the bottom of some of our deeper mine shafts. Radioactivity would never penetrate a mine some thousands of feet deep. And in a matter of weeks, sufficient improvements in dwelling space could easily be provided.
How long would you have to stay down there?
Well, let's see now. Cobalt thorium G.
It's magic science measuring device.
Half-life of... I would think that possibly 100 years.
You mean people could actually stay down there for 100 years?
It would not be difficult, my Führer. Nuclear reactors could... I'm sorry, Mr. President. Nuclear reactors could provide power almost indefinitely. Greenhouses could maintain plant life.
So it's the illusion of Operation Paperclip, too.
Yeah, well, that's what he is. Clearly, he's a paperclip guy. Still got his allegiance to the Reich.
Sure, yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of real stuff in Dr. Strangelove, including the behind-the-scenes collaboration between all these heads of states from different blocks. You got the Soviet guy here. You've got the German with the Americans, all plotting over this map of the world. And but this idea, again, the idea of the ultimate power of destruction is just
Gentlemen, there's no fighting in the war room.
Dead and slaughtered,
Slot.
Quick survey would have to be made of all the available mine sites in the country, but I would guess that dwelling space for several 100,000 of our people could easily be provided.
Well, I would hate to have to decide who stays up and who goes down.
Well, that would not be necessary, Mr. President. Could easily be accomplished with a computer. And the computer could be set and programmed to accept factors from youth, health, sexual fertility, intelligence, and a cross-section of necessary skills. Of course, it would be absolutely vital that our top government and military men be included to foster and impart the required principles of leadership and tradition.
Looks at him too. But I mean, there's so much there to unpack as well. I mean, this idea of, the elect elite who will be the ark of civilization, science creating, the ark. This is the ark of scientism, right? We can kill off all the world, flood the world with, nuclear holocausts and create a new order of the ages afterwards and, emerge victorious over death and conquer death through, taking control of death, right? So it's like, it's this kind of inverted theology where, instead of Christ rising from the dead, trampling down death by death and bestowing life to those in the tombs, it's man. Man will entomb himself and destroy everything and then, reemerge victorious to remake the world and repopulate the new paradise with all the...
By the way, this is all in Comte and this kind of strategy, choosing different, you also have this Proudhon, Fourier, sorry, he has these different phalanxes, or was it Proudhon? I get the two mixed up, that will serve these kind of, and it's all scientifically planned and reasoned out.
Scientific genocide.
Actually, they would breed prodigiously, eh? There would be much time and little to do. But with the proper breeding techniques and the ratio of, say...
The proper chaos magic pickup artist techniques taught to you by Jeff Goldblum.
10 females to each male, I would guess that they could then work their way back to the present gross national product within, say, 20 years.
But look here, Doctor, wouldn't this...
Do you see how everything's scientified and put in an algorithm?
Yeah.
That's something that Dr. Germino also brings up, that in the 19th century in particular is this obsession with formulas that we can solve all of life's problems through these algorithms.
Yeah. Quantifying everything. I mean, he's got, the repopulation of the planet and even human procreation, just proper breathing techniques. There's no, it's the removal of, there's no love. There's no idea of divine intervention at all in anybody's, daily life from the worldview of Dr. Strangelove. It's all just scientific regimentation.
Jeff Goldblum said, God isn't a factor in this.
Yeah.
So that was actually good that Michael Crichton put that in there.
Well, that's probably not even in anything to do with Crichton. That was a recent one. I haven't seen that movie. I think it was 2018.
Oh, that was a different, okay.
It was a 2018 reboot,
A remake.
Yeah.
That's right.
Fifth try.
Well, then it wasn't a good critique. It was probably some stupid Hollywood edition, science has to be atheistic, so make sure let everybody know that.
Right. So sometimes it's hard to tell if it's actually if they're spoofing or critiquing or just embodying, right? It's a fine line sometimes.
That's why you got to know who the author is.
Yeah, it's probably just some producer or something that put that line in there.
But they'd be so grief-stricken and anguished that they, envy the dead and not want to go on living.
No, sir. Excuse me. Also, when they go down into the mine, everyone would still be alive. There would be no shocking memories, And the prevailing motion will be one of nostalgia for those left behind, combined with a spirit of bold curiosity for the adventure ahead.
You like biting it.
Doctor, you mentioned the ratio of 10 women to each man. Wouldn't that necessitate the abandonment of the so-called monogamous sexual relationship? I mean, as far as men were concerned.
Regrettably, yes. But it is, a sacrifice required for the future of the human race.
His face.
I hasten to add that since each man will be required to do prodigious service along his lines, the women will...
That's in here.
The necessity of rearranging our social life to align with the principles of the new scientific worldview, which of course requires genocide, eugenics.
So the Saint Simonians, following Saint Simone too, they preached a message of full psychic and physical liberation, and anticipated in many respects the attack on contemporary radical thought of a repressive society. Inevitably, they're accused of advocating sexual promiscuity, right? Because they spoke of free love, and there was something else that I found in here really interesting too. I think it was, you get all this, a breakdown of the family and stuff, and kind of free, that you see in this too, that like, well, obviously for evolution's sake, we're going to have to just, break down the family and have, no longer will have any monogamous relationships. This is in Proudhon, I think, or Fourier. But what's crazy is that I found, it's in Charles Fourier. One of his manuscript on sexual liberation called The New World of Love. Okay, now keep in mind, Fourier is in 1772. This book of his, right, this advocating this stuff, this promiscuity and sexual liberation, well, it just remains unpublished until the first time? Guess what year?
The 60s.
1967, the summer of...
Yeah.
Surprise,
so-called love,
surprise.
Summer of lust. Well, it's in all that occult literature also. You had this huge flooding of occult literature that was kind of unparalleled. The only other time where there was such a huge release of occult material was pre-World War II Germany, right? Like before the rise.
And didn't Crowley actually say he was ushering in the new aeon?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So it's Dr. Strangelove, very, very Crowleyan, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's the end of that clip anyways. But yeah, we got...
what else we got?
What's that? Sorry.
We got any questions?
Yeah, let's see. You guys got any questions or anything for Father Deacon Dr. Ananais, who you can find over at the Norwegian News on YouTube. Or if you just enjoyed the stream, you want to support via the Streamlabs. Let's see. Shaner tit $2. Didn't ask anything. Let's see if we got any other ones here. Yeah, I mean, this has been great. We should we'll have to do another one about the cult of the Koof cult, I guess we can call it for now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Father Deacon Dr. Ananais, we appreciate you coming on. Anything else that comes to mind that we didn't hit on, or where can people find you? Where can people find more of your work, and maybe get in touch with you if they'd like?
So, most of my papers, I think, The most recent ones too that I've given at conferences, philosophy conferences, are on my academia.edu, which I think is, I don't even know what my name of my academia.edu is. Let me look up real quick and I'll put that. So you can find, because people are always asking me about that. Let's see real quick. I guess it's Eric Sorm, which is my non-clergy pagan Norse name. My professor name. Should I put it in the chat?
Yeah, go for it.
Norwegian News, you probably have that link. The Norwegian News on. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I have the Logic Lectures as well. Follow me on Twitter at Ananais Father. What else should I say?
Where can people find? I don't know. What's your private address? Your social security number or something like that.
That's what the people really want.
They really want. They want your home address, social security number. Sorry, I'm changing the title on the video here to. Got to throw Jurassic Park and Dr. Strangelove in the title because I think much of it brought that into the lens. But yeah, I think this was a fantastic stream. Dr. Jeff Goldblum has enlightened us all very much. Dr. Ian Malcolm taught us so much about the science and.
Yeah, so this nice thing that Goldblum shows that. So what is it? Let's just summarize this. What is scientism? It's when you absolutize, right, science above all other, like in the empirical inductive mode of knowing is the only legitimate and mode of knowing. It essentially takes on a religious quality and totalitarian. Because as Augusto de Noche says, the distinctive ideology of a technological society is scientism. And that's the view that science is the only true knowledge. So if you looked in all those scenes that we saw with Jeff Goldblum, right, it's ethics is solved, right? And the Dr. Strangelove, survival, right? Breeding, family, all of that's solved by the scientist. God is removed. Jeff Goldblum now acts and speaks on behalf of the priest, the ethicist, the philosopher. He really represents, that is a view of scientism because it's the view that science is the only true knowledge. And as Augusto de Noche argues, that inevitably leads to totalitarianism. Why? Because here's a great quote. He states, an advocate of scientism in society based on his way of thinking cannot help being totalitarian inasmuch as his conception of science. Listen to this. So remember all the hiding of what Fauci was doing? Mm-hmm. The conception of science cannot be the object of any proof. He does not. So that's why you got to get rid of the philosophers, right? Because they're looking for the grounds of what would actually make Dr. Fauci, what he says, actually science? Well, you can't ask that question. There's the modern Gnosticism, right? We got to hide that, right? So you create these kind of tactics, and that reveals your scientism. He does not intend to elevate other forms of thought to a higher level. So there is no critical analysis. You can't use philosophy in an investigative analysis about what actually makes something science or good science. What does he do? As Del Noce says, Augusto Del Noce in The Crisis of Modernity, he simply denies them. So in scientism, not only are those kinds of non-falsifiable methods employed, you use that totalitarian tactic. Notice what he does too, he uses the media. So this is what's really important, and part of this too is described in the Scientism of Saint Simon and Kant. Social feeling, groupthink, which all are enforced through media. So you need a monopolization, right? This is where technocracy becomes so valuable. You need an ideological and practical kind of monopoly so that you can actually spread this scientism and conceal the truth. And you do that through media, education, politics, corporations, state, etc. And what do they all say? It's all settled, right? They're all speaking in one voice. The science is settled. And I find it interesting that Saint Simon Comte actually advocated for using those tactics. And we're using those tactics. Lastly, let's take a quote from Neil Postman. By scientism, I mean 3 interrelated ideas that taken together stand as one of the pillars of technocracy. The methods of the natural sciences can be applied to the study of human behavior, i.e. social sciences, right?
Yeah.
Then 2, social science generates specific principles. That's why you got to put the word science on there. Generates specific principles which can be used to organize a society on a rational and humane basis. See Dr. Strangelove right there that we just pointed out. This implies that technical means mostly invisible technologies supervised by experts can be designed to control human behavior and set it on its proper course. And 3, faith in science can serve as a comprehensive belief system that gives meaning to life, as well as a sense of well-being, morality, and even immortality. Hence, Jeff Goldblum's God isn't part of the picture.
Right, yeah.
Let's end with that. I think that's a great kind of quote that kind of summarizes everything that we've seen and discussed. How are you being swindled to believe that scientism is actually science?
Yeah.
And what is scientism?
Yeah. And sold on false dreams of the future, false delusions of the past, and a strange, twisted, demonic kind of eschatology of salvation from either your own will or from the Space Brothers or from the experts or from I guess total annihilation for some people would be kind of their vision of salvation if you're coming from like the nihilist perspective. All right, there we go.
Lord have mercy. God help us.
All right. Thank you, Father. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And
that was awesome.
Everybody who's watching, we appreciate your support. We appreciate the tips. We appreciate you guys liking these, sharing these, subscribing. Make sure to jump over there to Rockfin if you're on YouTube. The link's in the description. Go over there on Rockfin and see future content unfiltered. We were good little YouTube citizens today, and we didn't get into anything that will get this channel banned, like that stream that got me a strike. But we're back on YouTube, and we'll be staying here. We'll keeping it YouTube clean. But the stuff that's not allowed on YouTube, because of scientism, very often, we will be over on Rockfin. So big shout out to the Rockfin crew. Thank you guys for your support over there on Rockfin for the tips. We got any last tips over here? Let me see if there's any last tips on Rockfin. We appreciate all you guys' support there. John McGann said, no question, just enjoying the stream. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody who has supported via the Streamlabs tips over there on YouTube. Hey, the YouTubers beat the Rockfinners for once. This is the first time in months. Usually Rockfin is super supportive. YouTube was more supportive today. Not to denigrate the great folks over there on Rockfin who are supporting, but the YouTube did pull ahead, and they're going to win that free trip to Mars if they make sure that they demonstrate their proper vaccination status and install Elon Musk's Neuralink. Get that free trip to Mars forever if you want, right? And go to the cloud or update yourself and upload yourself forever. So that's what the top tippers will get. Thank you guys for watching. All jokes aside, appreciate you guys watching. And thank you so much, Father, for coming on and for addressing the audience. All right. Let's see.